there's going to be increasing pressure to engage with efforts to end the war on terms that Israel might be able to live with, that might indeed bring about the end of Hamas rule in Gaza and the release of the hostages. And in that regard, I have to say that while I support the aims of the war, Netanyahu's rejection of any notion related to the U.S. proposal backed by Europeans and by Arabs that achieves these ends is reckless to the point of irresponsible.
Absent a day after, absent what happens after that, it hinders the current step, the current position of where Israel is in. I think the sooner such a plan is drawn up, or at least even have a discussion in the war cabinet that hasn't happened yet regarding the day after, the sooner that happens, the easier it will be not only for that plan to actually come into fruition, but for the military to fully execute their goals.
I have to add, it also affects the entire war plan on two different levels. One is international. The minute the world suspects that Israel's goal is a permanent occupation or endless war or just confusion and destruction of Gaza as a punitive measure, support for the war is sapped around the world. And in particular, Israel needs American support for munitions, for an umbrella at the UN, in general, to rally the West and to organize peace plans and exit strategies, and Israel's abdicating that by refusing to discuss the day after. Second, on a political front in Israel, a war so costly for the economy in terms of human life, in terms of disruption to everything happening in the country, needs political support. And the steadfast, stubborn refusal of Netanyahu to even enter a significant discussion about this foments a sense in Israel that the war is being driven by political calculations for Netanyahu's own survival, that saps the strength in a society to continue carrying out an operation so costly. It is really devastating.
But the belief among war ministers and many lawmakers that the only way to secure a deal is through military pressure, that the battles raging in Khan Yunis may tighten the noose on Hamas leadership and force their hand to agree to a deal to get the hostages home rather than a ceasefire. What's your take on that, especially now as the war goes on?
Dictatorial police states generally have the advantage of not needing to take public opinion into account the way democracy does. But even in such regimes, and even under the odious mafia state of Hamas in Gaza, it's not irrelevant that the people of Gaza undoubtedly are clamoring for an end to this. So yes, there is that factor to be considered. In general, I think it's wonderful for Israel to be finally a little bit active in making proposals of its own. I would have these proposals go further. I would not bet a lot of money that this particular proposal is adopted, but it has elements that are good. The Palestinian Hamas leadership is probably not going to agree to the return of all the hostages for only 2 months, because the hostages are their life insurance policy. Yahya Sinwar has undoubtedly surrounded himself with human shields in the form of the Israeli hostages, and he probably wants to live for more than 2 months longer. But in addition, with other elements, for example, an agreement by Israel to allow the exile of the Hamas leadership, I think we could have the foundations of something reasonable here. It, at the end of the day, is potentially part of the bigger deal that the Americans are trying to further, even as we speak. Brett McGurk, the envoy, is in Egypt, I believe, and is on his way to Qatar. And this is the bigger picture. Israel's offer is good, but inadequate, and hopefully will eventually slot into this bigger picture that would yield peace with Saudi Arabia, a rebuilding of Gaza with the assistance of the Arab countries, which would then align their interests with those of Israel, the end of the Houthi madness and Hezbollah insanity in the north, and other aspects that are definitely not a submission to a U.S. imposition, but rather very advantageous for Israel and for the region.